The world is watching the Middle East with great concern today. A long and bitter rivalry between Iran and Israel is now at a boiling point. For many years, these two nations have been engaged in a shadow war. They have fought each other indirectly, using proxies and covert operations. This hidden conflict has taken place across the region, from Syria to Lebanon. But now, the fighting is threatening to break out into the open. The risk of a direct military confrontation is higher than it has been in years. The consequences of such a war would be devastating for the entire world, affecting global security and the economy. The roots of this animosity are deep and complex. After Iran's Islamic Revolution in 1979, the relationship between the two countries changed dramatically. What was once a quiet partnership turned into a deep and lasting hostility. Israel views Iran as an existential threat, a nation that seeks its destruction. It points to Iran's leadership, which has often called for Israel's demise. For its part, Iran sees Israel as an illegitimate state and an extension of American power in the Middle East. This fundamental opposition has fueled decades of mistrust and conflict, creating a cycle of escalation that is now reaching a critical peak. This long-running conflict has seen many forms of aggression. Israel has been accused of assassinating Iranian nuclear scientists and carrying out cyberattacks against Iran's infrastructure. In return, Iran has supported militant groups that oppose Israel, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. These groups have frequently clashed with Israel, acting as Iran's partners in its regional strategy. This proxy warfare has allowed both sides to attack each other without triggering a full-scale war. However, recent events, particularly the war in Gaza that began in late 2023, have changed the rules of engagement, leading to more direct and dangerous confrontations. The situation we see today, on June 21, 2025, is the direct result of this escalating shadow war. The conflict is no longer confined to the shadows. It has spilled out into a series of direct attacks and public threats. The rhetoric from both sides has become increasingly aggressive, leaving little room for de-escalation. International observers and diplomats are working around the clock to prevent the worst-case scenario. They fear that a single miscalculation or a deliberate provocation could ignite a regional war with catastrophic consequences. The stakes have never been higher, and the path to peace appears narrower than ever before. At the very center of the current crisis is Iran's nuclear program. This is the main source of tension between Iran and Israel. For more than 2 decades, Israel has warned that Iran is secretly trying to build a nuclear bomb. Israel believes that an Iran armed with nuclear weapons would pose an unacceptable threat to its very existence. It has repeatedly stated that it will do whatever is necessary to prevent this from happening. Iran, on the other hand, has always insisted that its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes only. It claims it only wants to generate electricity and produce medical isotopes, not build weapons of mass destruction. This disagreement has created a dangerous standoff. Israel does not believe Iran's claims of peaceful intent. It points to Iran's past activities and its development of long-range missiles as proof of a military ambition. The international community has also been deeply concerned. This led to the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, known as the JCPOA. Under that agreement, Iran agreed to limit its nuclear activities in exchange for the lifting of economic sanctions. However, the United States withdrew from this deal in 2018 under President Trump. This decision led to the re-imposition of sanctions and caused Iran to restart and expand its nuclear work, bringing the issue back to a crisis point. The situation has become much worse recently. Earlier this month, on June 12, 2025, the International Atomic Energy Agency took a significant step. Its Board of Governors passed a resolution declaring Iran to be in breach of its non-proliferation obligations. This was a major diplomatic blow to Tehran. In response, Iran defiantly announced it would open a 3rd uranium enrichment plant. Uranium enrichment is a key process that can be used to produce fuel for a nuclear reactor or, at higher levels, material for a bomb. This move is seen by Israel and the West as a clear escalation toward acquiring nuclear weapons capability. Israel's primary concern is Iran's Fordo facility, which is buried deep inside a mountain. This makes it very difficult to destroy with conventional bombs. Israeli officials worry that their air force may not have the right kind of weapons, like powerful bunker busters, to guarantee its destruction. This technical challenge adds another layer of complexity to Israel's military calculations. The fear is that if Iran's program advances much further, it will cross a point of no return. At that point, it would be almost impossible to stop Iran from building a bomb, forcing Israel to decide whether to act now, even with the risks involved. The United States plays a crucial role in this escalating crisis. As Israel's closest ally, Washington's position is watched carefully by all sides. The Trump administration is trying to manage a very difficult situation. President Trump has said he prefers a diplomatic solution and has engaged in talks with Iran. A sixth round of negotiations is scheduled to take place in Oman. However, he has also warned of a chance of massive conflict if diplomacy fails. The United States has been clear that it wants Iran to give up its ability to enrich uranium entirely, a demand that Iran's supreme leader has firmly rejected just this month. The American government is walking a tightrope. It is trying to restrain Israel while also putting pressure on Iran. President Trump has reportedly warned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to launch a military strike while negotiations are ongoing. The White House has informed Israel that while it would not provide offensive assistance for an attack, it might offer intelligence or defensive support if Iran retaliates. This nuanced position shows the deep divisions within the international community. The United States has also taken precautions, pulling some diplomats from the region and authorizing the voluntary departure of military families due to the rising risk of violence. Other world powers are also involved, but their influence is limited. European countries, along with Russia and China, were parties to the original 2015 nuclear deal. They have tried to salvage the agreement and encourage a return to diplomacy. However, their efforts have been largely unsuccessful in the face of American sanctions and Iranian escalation. Britain has recently issued new warnings for commercial shipping in the Middle East, highlighting the broader economic risks of the conflict. These nations fear that a war would not only destabilize the region, but also disrupt global energy supplies and create a massive refugee crisis, with consequences felt far beyond the Middle East. Meanwhile, Israel feels that the window for action is closing. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been vocal in his belief that Iran's regime is vulnerable. He has pointed to the weakening of Iran's regional allies, like the fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, as a sign of opportunity. In February 2025, he declared that the Iran terror axis has never been weaker. This assessment is driving Israel's sense of urgency. Israeli leaders believe that the international community is not doing enough to stop Iran. They feel that if they do not act decisively, they will be left to face a nuclear-armed Iran alone, a scenario they have vowed to prevent at all costs. Recent events have pushed this fragile situation to the edge of a full-blown war. The timeline of escalation has been rapid and alarming. Following the start of the Gaza war in October 2023, direct attacks between Iran and Israel increased. By mid-June 2025, the situation had deteriorated significantly. United States intelligence reports indicated that Israel was making concrete preparations for a military strike on Iran's nuclear sites. This was followed by Iran's claim that it had obtained secret documents about Israel's own undeclared nuclear arsenal, a move designed to raise the stakes and deter an Israeli attack. In response to these developments, Iran has placed its military on its highest level of military readiness. Its leaders have issued stern warnings, promising a harsh and swift retaliation against any country that attacks its territory. President Masoud Pezeshkian has stated that even if its nuclear facilities were destroyed, they would simply be rebuilt. This defiant posture suggests that Iran is not willing to back down in the face of military threats. The combination of Israeli military preparations and Iranian defiance has created a perfect storm for conflict, where both sides appear locked on a collision course with little room to maneuver. The key points are clear and deeply troubling. The core of the conflict is Iran's nuclear program, which Israel sees as a direct threat to its survival. A history of shadow warfare has now escalated into direct confrontations. The United States is attempting to find a diplomatic path forward, but is also preparing for the possibility of conflict, while other global powers have struggled to de-escalate the crisis. Recent events, from the IAEA's condemnation of Iran to Israel's preparations for a strike, have made the situation more dangerous than ever. The region is holding its breath, hoping to avoid a devastating war. In summary, the risk of war between Iran and Israel is exceptionally high because of a convergence of factors. The long-standing animosity has been dangerously inflamed by the nuclear issue. Diplomatic efforts are faltering, and both sides are hardening their positions. Israel feels it must act now to prevent a nuclear Iran, while Iran refuses to be intimidated and continues to advance its program. The international community is divided and struggling to contain the crisis. As of today, the Middle East stands on the brink, and a misstep by either side could easily plunge the entire region into a conflict with unpredictable and catastrophic consequences for the world.